Ooh. Good morning, everyone. Ooh, we have a nice little intimate group. I was wondering if you guys could do me a favor and let's move in a little bit closer since we have a nice group and just whatever's comfortable for you guys. I understand we're still in COVID times, but yeah, let's try to see if we can move in a little bit closer. Awesome. Great. So again, I wish you guys good morning, and I want to thank all of you for coming to the Jump In conference this weekend and for attending this talk. My name is Jen Haya, and I'm an associate marriage and family therapist at Feeling Good Whole Health in Fremont, and I also work at the Couples Recovery Center located in the South Bay. Prior to getting into this field, I was actually one of the children's ministry directors here at Resonate, and I felt called out of ministry to pursue this career for myself after experiencing a really life-changing tragedy, but God was good through it. So I stepped down from ministry. I attended Western Seminary for my master's degree, and my first internship in the mental health field was actually with Union City Youth and Family Services, where I did on-site counseling at James Logan High School, which was actually the high school I attended when I was a teenager. And I was seeing students who were at risk, some of whom were already on probation and were mandated to see me in order to fulfill the obligations to get off of probation. And I saw other students who struggled with depression and anxiety. After working with UCYFS, I did a year at the Christian Counseling Centers in both Fremont and Hayward, where I saw adults, teens, and children. And today, I'm currently serving on Resonate's lay counseling oversight team. You guys heard, we now are starting our lay counseling ministry. And I've also been serving as a leader in Amplify Hayward since 2018. So I love teenagers. It's strange. I think they're awesome. And so, to be honest, I am really excited, but I am also very nervous, to be honest, about talking to you guys today about mental health and the gospel. What I felt called to share with you guys today is probably not what you're expecting when you heard that there was going to be a workshop on mental health. As I prepared for this talk, I noticed that I became more and more afraid of how this talk was going to be received because what I'm about to share is not easy. For some of us, and this is myself included, it's going to require a reorientation of our hearts. And it's going to change our perspective to the purpose of our parenting. This talk, it doesn't necessarily provide a convenient silver bullet to what our kids are facing today. It's going to take change on our part. It's going to take persistence, and it's going to take humility. And if you're like me, who has the idol of ease and comfort, if I'm honest, this shift is tough. And so even as I wrote this, I was like, whoa, calling myself out in all the ways that I feel I still need to grow in these areas. And yet at the same time, I remind myself, and I want to remind all of you, that our God is always and will be greater than our failures as well as our victories. So we can rest in that freedom. Amen? All right. So today I am going to define mental health. I'm going to provide some information on what we're seeing in today's youth. And then I'm going to go into the gospel's role in mental health. And next, here's the tough part. I'm going to discuss what our role as parents is in all of this. But don't worry, after that, I'm going to go over how we as parents can jump in. You like that? I use that thing. Jump into this role. So I invite you guys to buckle up, fam. Here we go. So what is mental health? Mental health is the state of a person's emotional and psychological well-being. This includes their ability to cope with everyday stresses and their ability to work productively. So even before the pandemic, the mental health of many of our youth was already on the decline. Suicide was already the second highest cause of death for those between the ages of 10 and 34. One of the members of our lay counseling oversight team, she actually does work with the crisis centers here in the Bay Area, and she told me, sadly, that the rate is going up again since the pandemic. The Center of Disease Control reports that 1 in 3 high school students were struggling with mental health during the pandemic. Nearly half of students reported feelings of being hopeless and sad. More than half of students experienced emotional abuse in their homes. And there was a 31% increase in mental health-related ER visits. So we're talking about possible accidents with kids that were cutting, suicide attempts, and suicidal ideation. Many students have been struggling with crippling anxiety since returning to in-person learning, and depression will often go hand in hand with anxiety when young people just feel so exhausted by what anxiety does to their body. I've gotten many parents coming to me in search of help for their children who are struggling, and our practice, as well as those of many of our colleagues, have already been at max capacity trying to support all people of all ages who are reaching out now. And I'm glad that people are now feeling that freedom and breaking out of that feeling of stigma and saying, I need help. That's a thing that we need to celebrate too. Now, sometimes as adults, I think that we wonder, what could be so tough for kids, right? They have a place to eat, or they have a place to live, food to eat. They just have to get their education. They don't understand the adult responsibilities that we face today, right? Well, I actually believe that life can be just as hard for kids. They struggle in the same ways that we do, and I think this new generation struggles in ways that we probably don't understand. And you guys are going to learn more about that in Danielle's talk if you guys attend the Gen Z talk. Because of the pandemic, their education and their ability to socialize has been greatly impacted. We've learned here speaking from the pulpit, our pastors have talked about how we are created for connection, right? And so that ability to connect with others that was taken away during the pandemic has greatly influenced our kids. They're having to practice lockdown drills in their schools in the event that an active shooter comes onto campus. If you guys are a part of my generation, the most we practiced was earthquake and fire drills, guys. You remember that? And so that made me sad when I heard about that. Bullying now is a 24/7 reality because of social media, whereas when I was in school, when school let out from 3 p.m. until the next morning, at least I had that reprieve, right? And now it's 24/7. When rumors go out, it's not to just your school, it's on blast for the whole world to see, right? They're worried about the future. They feel the pressures of measuring up to their peers and their parents' expectations. There's a reason why Scripture tells us again and again not to put our hope in the things of this world, because the things of this world, they fade. They betray us. They abandon us, or they get ripped out from under us. So if we can't put our hopes in the things of this world, where should we put our hope instead? Last week, I was at Amplify Summer Camp. And luckily this year, I came back without a broken bone. Y'all are wrong for clapping for that. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking. But I had the privilege of hearing Ryan Weber, who used to lead in ResKids here in Fremont. He was preaching the gospel to us every single night at the campfire. The main theme of the week was about how the gospel was the firmest foundation that we could build our life upon. Using these jumbo-sized Jenga blocks, they were huge, right? They actually looked like the perfect size for Weber, but they were huge for me. And he showed how, the gospel creates this firm foundation where Jesus, Scripture, love, God's acceptance, all of that is creating that firm foundation. And on top of that firm foundation is where God calls us to build those other things, those other aspects of our lives. That's our career, that's our talents, that's our wealth, even our worries, that is going to be the foundation that we can put all of those things on because it's firm. It can hold it. He also showed us how we as human beings tend to take one of those other top aspects like money, time, worry, all those things, and we make the mistake of making that the foundation instead. So here you see this other tiny tower here. And he was showing us like, what's one thing that you guys notice about the difference between this tower and this tower? Anybody want to describe the difference that they see?
Less stable.
There you go. Yeah, it's less stable. If life took one of these blocks out from under it, the whole thing will collapse, right? Over here, you could take this out, you could take that out, but this bottom part, that'll still stay standing. It was a really concrete way for our kids to understand the value of the gospel being the foundation. Human beings are meaning-making machines, and we base our lives on the things that we believe give us meaning in this world. Depression and anxiety ensue when our meaning is lost or it's threatened, which is why great loss in our circumstances can be so devastating to mental health. But when we find meaning in the gospel, that is something that nobody can take away. With the gospel, we are equipped with the most effective foundation to withstand the things that will challenge our mental health and our emotional health throughout our lives. The mental health of our children is going to be challenged throughout their lives. That's just a given. The first part of John 16:33 says, I have said these things to you that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation. Brothers and sisters, there is no way that we as parents are going to be able to control the circumstances so that our kids will never suffer. I know if you're a parent like me, I don't like seeing my girls suffer. I don't like seeing them in pain, you know? But the reality is that we can't control that for them, and we can't even control that for ourselves, right? But there's a second part of that verse, and it's important. Jesus said, but take heart, I have overcome the world. The best way to support the mental health of our children is to provide them with that firm foundation that the gospel provides. We need to lead them there. In Matthew 7, verses 24 through 27, Jesus was saying, everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on the house, but it did not fall, because it had been founded on the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. As the rain fell and the floods came and the winds blew and beat against that house, it fell, and great was the fall for it. When a child builds their foundation on the gospel, their ability to withstand the storms of life are much more secure. They may experience great, unimaginable loss, but they're still left with the greatest gift possible in Jesus. Before I move on, I want to point out a couple of things that I'm worried might happen after I give this talk. I worry that this message will be oversimplified and our kids' struggles with mental health might be boiled down to not praying enough or not believing enough. Not only can that be hurtful to our kids, it can actually create an environment that makes it feel unsafe for them to come to us when they need help. Also, I feel like I should say that although challenges to our children's mental health can be circumstantial in nature, there are still instances where the issues with mental health may stem from biological or genetical reasons. Bottom line is this: if you are concerned about your child, how they're doing mentally or emotionally, reach out to them, talk to them. And if necessary, I encourage you to reach out to a professional. And I'll make myself available after if any of you guys need to talk one-on-one. Okay, so What is our role as parents when it comes to helping our kids build that gospel foundation in their lives? We heard this last night. We are the primary disciplers of our children. You know, one way that we tend to miss the mark here, and this is myself included, is that we mistakenly treat learning the gospel the way that we approach all other things that we want our kids to learn in life. To learn math, we send them to school. To learn martial arts, we send them to a dojo. To learn an instrument, we hire someone to instruct them. Now, in church, we have ResKids and we have Amplify, and I praise God for both of those ministries. They're doing so much in trying to support you guys in building that foundation for your kids. But learning to embody the gospel in their lives is one of those things where it is best learned within the strength of consistency in the relationship. Did you know that when you serve in ResKids or Amplify, the leaders there make every effort to be there every single week because they want to build relationship with your kids. They want to know them. They want to love them. We see your kids for a couple of hours once a week if they come to ResKids, maybe twice a week if they come to Amplify. But the vast majority of the hours that they spend are in your homes. God calls us to be in the driver's seat of our child's discipleship, not the back seat. I've had the privilege of talking to several clients who'd grown up in the church, and when they became adults, they told me that they chose to walk away. And one of the things that they did immediately after walking away from the church is they pursued their own way through life. My favorite question to ask them was, what made them walk away? You know, I like being curious about that and help me understand. And it's interesting that the answer that I often get, it doesn't usually have to do with God. The answer that I get is that it was often people that were their reasons for walking away. Whether it was their own family or the congregation itself, that was why. They would say something like, you know, my parents, they would make us go to church every single Sunday. We would go there, show up, and we would be in our Sunday best and put on our church facade. And then we would go home, and nothing that I heard being spoken from the pulpit was ever practiced in my home. So I thought to myself, what's the point, right? And I have to admit, guys, when I hear that, I'm like, that's rational. That makes sense. That makes sense that you don't believe because nobody was having it make sense for you. Now, I'm not saying, this was said last night too, I'm not saying that it is our job to save our kids. That's God's and God's alone. But if we aren't committed to our own faith and allowing our kids to see our faith walk, to see the way that God works in our life, we're taking away a huge opportunity for our kids to know God and his character. We're taking away a huge opportunity of showing them how God works, that he is worthy of our worship and that he's worthy of our obedience. Pastor Paul David Tripp talks about an important shift that needs to happen for effective gospel parenting to take place. Pastor Ryan mentioned this last night. We often take the ownership perspective to our parenting, meaning that our parenting is motivated by what we want from our children and what we want. Let me go back. It is motivated by what we want for our children and what we want from our children. We want them to be successful. We want them to have a life that has little to no suffering. We want our kids to give us meaning and purpose. We might even want them to be well-mannered and behaved, right? We want them to represent us in the best light possible. I'm guilty of that too. And I was definitely raised in a household where that perspective, that ownership perspective of parenting was the thing. I was raised in that with my parents. And we need to shift to what Pastor Tripp calls the ambassador perspective, or what Pastor Ryan shared was the steward perspective. He wrote, good parenting, which does what God intends it to do, begins with this radical and humbling recognition that our children don't actually belong to us. Rather, every child in every home, everywhere on the globe, belongs to the one who created him or her. Children are God's possession for his purpose, not ours. The other night at Amplify Hayward, we had the privilege of hearing from Jonathan Lubers. He's our online campus director. And he was preaching to our students about anxiety, and a lot of the students were telling me, oh man, that was so helpful. That's something that they face all the time. So he was preaching to the students about anxiety and what Jesus taught on the Sermon on the Mount, in the Sermon on the Mount. And in small groups, we got to hear what the kids were experiencing. Family, can I share with you that the root of many of their anxieties come from fearing that they're going to let you down or let others down? That they'll disappoint you or not measure up to your expectations? And it's not any different than what I hear from my young clients who don't go to church. But the God that our children belong to says they are loved exactly where they are. And he sacrificed his only son to make a way for these children to be with him in paradise. Just not only for our kids, but for you and me too. As his ambassadors, I pray that we are going to grow in that embodiment of his love for them so that they will see him as greater than anything that they could hope for in this world. So now that we've talked about our role as parents, you're probably wondering, Jennifer, where do I start, right? Because this shift is such a big task. I want to focus on 2 changes that I think we can make starting today. Again, you guys heard this last night. It's really cool. I like the repeating things for you guys. One thing that we need to be doing is modeling the beauty of the gospel in our own lives and allow our kids to see our own reliance on the gospel. Modeling is one of the effective ways of leading and teaching others. It's one thing to tell someone how to do something, but when we're showing them, that increases the effectiveness. When we were teaching a lot of the techniques in the lay counseling ministry, I remember Kaylee, who is running the ministry. She's also my boss in like real life, everyday life. We would teach these techniques, right? And then we would look at everybody, and you would just kind of see these blank faces sometimes, and then they would just be like, "Could you actually show us how that's done?" And we realized, like, if we demonstrated it, after that, people were like, "Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense now. You showed me how. You showed me how." Modeling the life that God calls us to is one of the ways that Jesus taught his followers to help foster their foundation in him. And we need to be doing that same thing with our kids. And I'm going to try to do that with you guys. I'm going to share a little bit of a story with you guys about my kids. So I have twin daughters. They're going to be 10 next month. And the people in ResKids, they shared with me lovingly that during large group, my kids don't do anything. They don't worship. They just I think probably they sit in that Asian squat, like Ren, they sit with the Asian squat and they're just kind of looking, and they don't worship, right? And I had an ownership moment of parenting there. I was like mortified. I was like, oh my gosh, former children's ministry directors, kids don't even worship. What does that say about me? That was where my head went. That's my sinful nature. And so, again, it made me sad because I was mortified. And also, I realized that there's an aspect of our faith that they're not getting to experience, So last spring, my family decided to attend the worship night that was celebrating Resonate Movement's album release. And I worried that they were going to get bored. I heard that there wasn't going to be any ResKids thing going on for their age. And so I was like, oh, what is it going to be like to be sitting in the auditorium, we're worshiping, and they're just going to sit there like this? What are people going to say? Oh. And then, I saw the light sticks that they gave, and I was like, will that entertain them long enough, And so most of the night, my kids were just sitting quietly, watching what was happening around them, just like I thought. And, at that point, I was just like, Lord, I came here to worship. I'm just going to do what I came here to do. And, worshiping for me is one of my favorite ways my favorite faith practices. It is one of the ways that I feel my cup filled. it is one of the ways that I feel most connected to God. If you know me, then you know that I'm one of those people that will sing and then start weeping, crazy, and then like not be able to sing because I'm hyperventilating. And so I decided, I'm just gonna let them see me worship, and if they just kind of sit there, then okay, I surrender that to God. Now at a certain point, I remember I kind of looked, and they had been sitting between my husband and I noticed that one of them had actually started to stand, I won't tell you which one so that you don't compare the twins, but one of them started to stand. And then I was like, well, that's cool, and I continued to worship again. And then at the end of the night, my husband and I, we were collecting our things. And then she did this thing where she tugged my shirt, and then she said, Mama, I sang songs too. Remember last night when Jason was saying we need to celebrate those moments, right? I was stoked. We have so much influence on our kids. They are watching everything that you do. I'm gonna say that again. They're watching everything that you do. It's kind of scary, right? I know that there was probably a part of my daughter that sang, maybe because she wanted to please me. I get that, I'm like that. But as parents, it's our role to redirect that back to God. And I let her know that not only did that warm my heart to see, but man, was our Father pleased. Was our Father pleased to see her lift up her voice. And I told her, it's so much more awesome for him because God is so much more awesome than Mama. And I was just so glad to be able to witness that. In ministry, when I'm in Amplify, I also try my best to show up as authentically as possible to our students. So when I have opportunities to share, I'm open about the different ways that I struggle, the ways that I've suffered in life. And I talk about how God has always led me through the storms, and not only that, but he has brought beauty from ashes for me in so many ways. They get to see my own brokenness and how my only way through is my constant reliance on him. This is how they will understand that gospel foundation. I invite you guys to model for your kids the different facets of our faith walk. Whether it's our spiritual practices, reading scripture, praying together, worshiping, sharing authentically as appropriate to their age, and how God is working in your life. Share that with your kids. I'm not perfect at this. There was a point during the pandemic where my husband and I, we were like on this awesome streak. Every single morning we were having coffee together and we would start with devotion. And our kids were watching that. They knew, oh shoots, Mom and Dad are doing devotion. Let's be quiet a little bit, We fell off. I feel challenged. Even as we were writing our commitments on those magnets, I feel challenged to bring those things back. Let my kids witness our walks of faith. And I invite you guys to do the same. So the second thing that we do to improve the building of that gospel foundation is we can improve our presence with our children, specifically our listening. In our brokenness, we don't do this well. When I get clients, especially couples, first thing that I'm always doing with couples that come for therapy is teaching them how to listen to each other. And I think about how the person who was like the greatest listener ever, he was like awesome at listening. It was Jesus. He listened without prejudice. He asked questions. This is interesting. He asked questions even though he was omniscient. He already knew. But he would ask questions because he was showing his interest. He was showing his investment. He was showing his love to people. He was fully present with others, not busily trying to multitask. And he was so patient in his listening. Those who listened to him felt truly heard and seen by him, which is why encounters with him were so life-changing. To give you a jump start on how to improve your listening skills, I want to pinpoint a few that I feel are so important, and it's probably the ones that I see as the common, mistakes that we make as parents. So first, it's important to give our kids a place of safety and give them that space to explore what they're going through and to share what they're feeling with you. You do this by asking open-ended questions. You do this by being curious with your child. One thing that I do, I mess this up all the time, is that as a parent, and I wonder if you guys, raise your hand if you guys believe this too. I sometimes believe that I know exactly what my kid is thinking and feeling and why they do what they do. Great, I'm in company, yes. And the reality is that we're not God, guys. We don't know that. We may know our kids well, but we can't be assuming, because the moment that we assume and we're wrong, our kids are not gonna trust us. They're not gonna trust us to really be open with them and really be inviting to whatever it is that they do or don't want to share with us. It's one of the reasons why kids tell me that they don't want to share things with their parents. They always tell me, what's the point? They don't listen to me anyway. We have to humble ourselves in that position. We need to behave like we have no idea, that we can't see, and allow our kids to be the ones to show us what's going on. We also shouldn't dismiss their feelings or try to problem solve for them or shame them for what they're feeling. This ability to share and connect with us, it needs to be done in that safe environment that allows our kids to process all the negative experiences that they may be going through rather than suppress them. Because that suppression, that's what leads to a lot of the depression and anxiety that they might experience. Second thing, it's important to key into what our kids are feeling and understand their feelings. This is what we call empathy. When I became a therapist, I thought I was pretty good at empathy, and then somebody showed me that I actually have a lot to grow in, and our lay counselors even got a whole module on empathy. And it's something that I need to learn again and again, because there's actually, just like there's a fluency to the gospel, there's actually fluency to empathy too. But I'm gonna give you guys a couple of things that might help you along the way. Ask questions that will allow you to walk in their shoes and better understand what they're experiencing. If they're telling you about something that you've never experienced, ask them about it. What's that like? Really think about their experience and ask yourself, what would you feel if you were in their shoes? Try to see if maybe in your memories, is there something similar that you can kind of draw a parallel to? One of the things I also urge you to please don't do, although if you do, it's okay, there's God's grace, but I ask that you not invalidate their experience by comparing yours. When we compare our experiences to theirs, that just minimizes what they're going through. It's gonna make them feel like, again, Mom, Dad, you don't understand. You're not listening to me. Jesus had so much empathy for other people's suffering, and he wept for others who were going through pain, who were going through loss. What I find so interesting about Jesus being the ultimate in empathy is that he did all of this knowing that what he was gonna suffer was absolutely insurmountable. Like, you can't even compare what he suffered to what we suffer in this world. He knew that he was gonna have the ultimate suffering, yet he never said, yeah, I feel for you, but you know what I have to go through? He never did that, We need to love our kids exactly where they are, understand the pain that they're going through, and validate that. Say to them, I'm here with you. I've gone over what mental health is and the current state of mental health of our children. I've talked about the gospel's role in mental health and how it provides that firm foundation for our kids as they weather the storms of life. I talked about what our role is as parents and what that entails, how we need to kind of shift our approach from that ownership to that ambassador perspective. I showed how we need to become better listeners and how we need to model that gospel for our kids. This was a lot. How many of you guys are like, I'm mad overwhelmed right now? Yeah. I'm there with you too. We're not gonna get this right. We're not gonna be perfect at it. It wasn't our job to be the perfect parent. That was God's job, right? I would love for you guys to see this more as an invitation where you guys are gonna say yes to God using you for your kids, whatever way that is, in the mess, you know? Pastor Scott was talking to me before this talk, and he told me, Jen's gonna give this talk, and she's probably not fully equipped to do it, but you're gonna work through her. And I think, it's the same for us as parents too, you know? We're never gonna be fully ready. We're never gonna be perfect at what we're doing in life, but that isn't our role. That's Jesus' role, right? Let us remember that we have a good and faithful God who loves our children way more than we do, and it is in our weaknesses that his power is made perfect. So I invite you to feel that freedom to surrender his will for your children. I really am so happy to see so many of you here wanting to hear about mental health and the gospel today. I thank you guys for listening. And I invite you guys for the remaining time that we have. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Question. All right. Yes?
Are there any signs that we should be on the lookout for, like red flags or anything?
Yeah. So some of the red flags for, depression is you're going to notice that they start withdrawing, right? They might not be enjoying the things that they used to enjoy. Sometimes it's almost like they can't get out of bed, I know that for some, the irritability starts to increase, So basically, it's going to be different for every kid. That's why it's important for us to always be like looking at them and observing them, knowing what their patterns are. And when you start to notice something's off, like I watch my kids so much that I could tell when they shut down, and I immediately, stop what I'm doing and I sit with them and I ask them what's going on, So when you notice that there's something off, that's a time where you just invite them into like a safe conversation and go, hey, you know what? I noticed there's some different stuff going on, and like I love you, and I want to be able to help you, and I'm wondering if you could share with me if there's anything that I could do to support you, So seeing those slight shifts, in energy, in interest, those often are red flags. Actually, was that helpful?
Yes.
Okay, great. Jonathan.
Could you say a little bit more about age-appropriate vulnerability when you're engaging with your kid?
Yes. I want to give you guys an example. So with Amplify, and this is also because I want to respect you guys as parents. When I share about a loss that I experienced 6 years ago, I just share that I lost my brother, and so I talk about it in those terms. When I share with adults, I'm very open about it, and I share with people that I lost a brother to suicide. So, it's also just me at respecting parents that, I don't know if that topic has ever, come up in their family, but, that's something that I wouldn't share with like teenagers just yet, And it's not to say that, here's one thing that I want to point out as I'm saying this. if there are signs, or if you're worried that your kid might be having any kind of suicidal ideation, there's this myth that says if you mention suicide, it actually gives them an idea. That is one of the biggest myths that there are out there. We need to shine a light on that. If you see any signs that someone might be having like suicidal ideation, you're concerned, say it out loud. Say it out loud. Shine light on that. The enemy wants darkness on it, you know? But I invite you guys to be bold and say, hey, I'm concerned. I'm concerned that you are thinking of hurting yourself, you know? And I want you to talk to me because you are of value to me. I love you. Because a lot of the times when somebody is in that place of darkness, and it's like the darkest place, I will be bold enough to say that I have been there before, you know? One of the things that I believe is that I'm a burden to people, you know, so it would just be easier if I wasn't here anymore, you know, and that's a lie. That's a lie. So we need to bring those things to light. But as Jonathan was asking, it's like, that would be something that I would probably reserve more, a topic that I would reserve for young adults. Age appropriate in that also kids need to feel that security that their parents, you know, they're stable. Let's just say. I'm not saying that you guys have to be perfect. Again, it's not about your perfection. But like, for instance, my daughters still don't know the manner of my brother's passing, right? But they often will see me when I go through my waves of grief. They'll see me crying, you know, and they'll walk up to me and they'll go, "Mama, are you okay?" You know, and what I share with them is, Mama is hurting right now. Mama misses her younger brother like mad, you know, but man, I know I have Jesus. I know that Jesus is walking through this with me, and you guys are too, because you're here and you're checking on me, and I'm just so grateful that Jesus' love is being shown through, you know, your hugs and kisses, you know. And there was even one time where I was going through a wave of grief, and then my daughter said to me, "Mama, do you know that you could just talk to God, and you could actually just talk to Uncle Mig if you miss him?" And I was like, "You're right," you know. And that was just a great, like, let your kids lead you too, you know? Don't make the mistake of thinking that God can't work through them for you. Oh, that was like a lot of different thoughts all in one. Sorry about that, guys. But Jonathan, was that helpful?
Yeah, it was great. Thank you.
Okay. Got 2 minutes. Anybody else? Yes.
Sorry, second question. So I understand that kids, I recognize that kids have so much pressure to be equal and you know, it's so much harder to keep up in school now.
Yeah.
So I understand that we, as parents, shouldn't be contributing that, but they get it from their teachers, they get it from their peers, they get it from at school.
Yeah.
So part of the culture is like, okay, we can say, oh, it's okay, that C is okay, you'll be fine. But in the back of my mind, it's like, oh, man, but, you know, if you don't go to get to college, like, what are you gonna do? Like, how am I supposed to help you? You know, how do we challenge that cultural and social pressures with our desire not to put so much pressure on our kids to do well in school?
Yeah, you know, as you're saying that, like, I understand. We live in Silicon Valley, you know, like the valley of engineers, and you know, the cost of living and the pace of life is so much faster, you know, than other parts of the country. And to that, I would say, like, it's important for, even though the world outside is saying that, you know, the culture of your family, the values that they hold, that's where God is calling us to be countercultural, you know? And yes, you know, those are all pragmatic things. We want our kids to do well, so they go to school and they, you know, but like, we also have to be saying that at the same time that those things can be taken away too, you know? People lose jobs, right? I think some of the tech firms, they're laying off right now. People who spent thousands and thousands of dollars on their software engineering career, they're losing jobs. So it's still important for us to keep reiterating that gospel foundation through it all, you know? And I'm just kind of wondering, did I answer your question?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack, but that one gem helps.
Okay, yeah. I'm nervous, can you guys tell? Ooh, okay, one more. What? Oh.
I guess the follow-up to that question is more, I guess, how do we help our kids build resilience? And I think we just talked to a lot of parents. I think, yeah, they are going through a lot, but I
Yeah.
also feel like they're more sheltered also in the sense that we try to protect them away from them.
Yeah.
And then they're kind of, they're not very, I think, prone to handling pressure. And again, can't help but compare. I think our generation, we go through a lot of things as well.
Hmm.
Again, just to maybe, any pointers
Yeah.
to help them build, resilience and kind of go through it.
Yeah. When it comes to building that resilience, what it's going to be so important for us to actually, as parents, sit back and let them experience that struggle, but be with them in it. Help them talk through it. The way to build resilience, if you want to get stronger, you lift weights, right? And it's creating that tension, you're ripping up muscles, and then it's rehealing and it's getting stronger. We have to be able to let our kids go through that struggle and keep reminding them that God is with them and we're with them too, so that they're not going through it alone. And once they go through those experiences in the future, when things come up again, they're going to remember, I can go to my parents, I could go to God, I can go to my church community, and I know that no matter what will befall me, I'm not alone. But communication, being with them. Don't try to, stop them from experiencing those hard experiences. That's how they get stronger. Okay, I'm over time. I don't want to get in trouble, but thank you guys so much for coming today.